You are listening to the Disney Dreamgirls podcast, an unofficial Disney theme parks podcast, and this is show number 187 for November the 26th, 2017.
Where dreams begin.
Coming up on today's show, we have a very special trip reveal. We have some information we'd like to share with regards to Disneyland Paris, and then we will be sharing part 2 of that interview with Jim Korkis. While you listen, why not drop us a tweet at DisDreamGirls or at Jayne Phipps. Email info@disneydreamgirls.com. Join in the fun on our social media pages, facebook.com/DisneyDreamGirls. Our website for blogs, show notes, pictures and lots more is DisneyDreamGirls.com. Finally, share a bit of the love. Share this Disney show with all your friends. Let them know about the Disney Dreamgirls podcast.
Where dreams begin.
Hello and welcome to the Disney Dreamgirls podcast. My name is Michelle Young, and together with my good friend Jayne Phipps, we are your guides to the place where dreams begin. So let's start off the show with a hello there to Jayne.
Hello there back, Michelle.
It's so lovely to speak to you, my darling.
It is, but it's a bit nippy, love.
Do you know, we always do this. Let's stop talking about the blinking weather. It is November. It is going to be cold.
This is true. Can we talk about Christmas instead then?
Well, do you know, that was my next question. It's like you are psychic. Have you got your tree up yet?
No. Although I have got one light up. Which sounds very pathetic, but I was shopping and I bought something, so it seemed daft to put it away with all the decorations, so I just thought I'd get it out.
I imagine by the time this show is aired, my tree will be up, because I live with a Christmasaholic. All the way back in October, in the car, when we're out in his vehicle together, I've had to put up with Christmas carols. Seriously.
We have only just started with our Christmas music because my dad has a birthday in November, so we always wait until Mum's gone before we actually start with the Christmas music. That's a little kind of golden rule that we have. But I have to say, I think by the time this podcast airs, my outside lights will be up.
Oh, no. Do you know, the other day, I've been panicking about going to work because when he's at home, I just don't know if I'm going to come home to the house all decorated head to foot in Christmas and tinsel and monorails and whatever. But I am keeping my fingers crossed. I managed to sort of persuade him to wait till the end of November, but we'll see.
Yeah, things could happen between now and then, Michelle.
And talking of Christmas, last week's show, what a bumper show with everything and anything you want to do in Walt Disney World and Disneyland at Christmas.
Yeah, very jealous. I'd love to be doing either of them.
Well, we'd love to be doing anything with Disney at Christmas.
This is very true, very true.
So just a quick reminder, don't forget to catch up with Dis After Dark and Dis Down Under, because they will be doing the rest of the Disney theme parks between them. And it's a pretty good show, so make sure you catch up on their feeds. You can always go to our website if you need the links to their shows, or just search for Dis Down Under and Dis After Dark.
Yeah, give them a shout out.
Now, before we go any further with the show, I would like to put on a little bit of special audio I recorded the other day.
Ooh.
Where dreams begin.
Hello and welcome to a special segment of the Disney Dreamgirls podcast. I'm joined with a guest who's going to introduce themselves in a few moments, but I'd like to now speak to our listeners because I'm going to do a trip reveal. I'm going to surprise someone and tell them they're going on a Disney trip. So, here are your clues. I wonder, could this be you? This is a trip for somebody who's been to Walt Disney World and has also been to Disneyland Paris in the past. The trip is going to Disneyland Paris on the 29th of November, staying at the Santa Fe for 3 nights. The person who's going on this trip previously has been to Walt Disney World and made their dad go on Space Mountain, but Mum wouldn't go. Perhaps on this trip they will persuade their mum to get on Hyperspace Mountain in Disneyland Paris. This person's favourite character is Goofy. This person likes football. This person collects pet pillows. Could this be you? Are you currently listening, getting very excited with your fingers crossed, saying, Mum, could this be me? Could I be going to Disneyland Paris? Well, let's find out. The person going on this trip is a boy. The person going on this trip is 9 years old. The person going on this trip is the son of this listener.
Angie Mills. And Logan, yes, I can see you sat in the car. I'm sat next to you. And we're going to Disney now. That's where Daddy's taking us to the airport. I'm so excited.
So, Logan and Angie, I hope you have an amazing time. I hope this was as much fun for you to listen to and try and fathom out if this was your trip as it was ours to reveal it to you. Looking forward to the pictures.
Where dreams begin.
What a lovely trip reveal.
Oh, how exciting.
Do you know, I've been so wanting to share this audio for weeks, but it's got to drop just before she takes him to the airport. So I'm so excited to be able to have done that. And it leads me to think about all the different ways that you can tell people that they're going on a Disney trip, because sometimes you like to keep these trips as a surprise.
You do. Can I share a little surprise that one of my close friends has recently done with her daughters when they went to Disneyland Paris?
Go on.
So she got her two daughters together. They are aged 3 and 6. And she sat them down. I've got some news for you girls. And she made out that she was pregnant with a little boy. And both girls do not like babies, do not like boys. And the look on their faces was a picture. And then she went, no, we're going to Disneyland Paris. And it was just amazing to watch because they could not believe what Mum had said. And the girls were in tears with excitement and everything. It was cruel and hilarious and heartwarming all in one go.
Oh, how cruel though.
I know, but it was funny. I shouldn't say that, but it was.
Well, we're going to use a little bit of today's podcast to talk through some of the things that we would recommend a visitor for the first time or for somebody who's not been for a while to Disneyland Paris, whether it's Christmas time or any time. Some top tips from Jayne and Michelle, because obviously we went there earlier in the year together and had a few days of Disneyland Paris fun.
We did indeed.
And I suppose the first thing that I would like to say is things are changing in Disneyland Paris at quite a rapid speed. We've seen since Disney acquired a majority shareholding that there is a very subtle change, and the things that we don't like about Disneyland Paris are going away. They're really trying hard with things such as the smoking. They're trying hard to improve the food offerings to make them more, I'd say, Disney Americanified. You know, we saw at Halloween that they'd brought in Halloween style cupcakes, which has been normally something that they don't tend to have.
Noticed as well, there seemed to be a lot more offerings on with like that, particularly say with this Christmas season and the special events, the special times of the year, etc. There seems to be a lot more in depth happening, if that makes sense.
And I know on the show that Dis After Dark do about Disneyland Paris, they're going to go in detail about some of the Christmas offerings as well. And as you say, they are very good at certain elements already, such as the parades and the characters. And
Definitely.
If they can get the rest of the things up to that standard, that would be absolutely fantastic.
It's such a beautiful park, and it needs to be operating on a similar level to what we'd expect when we go to the States.
I'd like to see, for example, the more themed popcorn buckets being there, because that's a nice little souvenir you can bring back, and they're fairly practical because you can utilise them at home.
Yeah, not overly expensive either. And as we've said before with Disneyland Paris, the choice of souvenirs could be better. So, you know, little trinkets like that would appeal, especially to us Disney nerds, would go down really well.
I think with the souvenirs, once you've been and you go again, it's the same thing because it doesn't rotate the stock enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a little bit samey, isn't it?
So some highlights coming up, and I'm only, as I say, going to go very, very briefly through this, but I thought I had to get your hot take on this one.
Okay.
On the Royal Castle stage, there's going to be a Merry Stitchmas.
Yes, I see. I quite like the sound of this.
That sounds absolutely fab. And then in Videopolis, there's going to be Mickey's Christmas Big Band.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because, I mean, I love Christmas music anyway, so, you know, it should be a good one, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Something different as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Mickey's Magical Christmas Lights. You can't beat Christmas and lights.
They go together, don't they?
Absolutely. And, of course, you've got the Disney's Christmas Parade, which you can't complain about. Christmas and a parade.
Going to say it's a bit like Christmas and lights, Christmas and parade, you know, and the parades are pretty good. I have to give them that over at Disneyland Paris. We have enjoyed those ones over there before.
And it does sound as well, not just the love is going to Disneyland, but the love is going over to Walt Disney Studios, because they're getting 2 brand new shows, and they're getting a Sing Me a Merry Christmas, which is a musical cracker. Where you can sing along to your favourite Christmas songs, which I know you'd love.
Definitely.
Then there's going to be Goofy's Incredible Christmas.
Yeah, this is looking rather amazing, actually. They're using the Tower of Terror for some sort of projection light typey show.
Yeah, which is very similar to what's happening over in Walt Disney World with regards to Tower of Terror. So I'm liking that synergy between the parks.
Yeah, and it's nice to see the studios getting something as well, because we've often talked about the studios being maybe only a half-day park, etc. So it's great to see them, and maybe this is a sign of things to come, investing a little bit more over there, isn't it?
Talking about, and I don't know if you saw this, Jane, but you know that the Tron coaster is coming to Walt Disney World?
Yes.
There's been a massive rumour posted on Loopings, which is a Dutch-based resource, and they've basically said that Dutch attraction builder Vekoma have had dealings, and an order or an inquiry has been placed for one of these, possibly for Paris. And it possibly would be going into the studios, because it wouldn't fit in Tomorrowland, because Tomorrowland in Disneyland Paris is Discoveryland. And it's very different, and the theming just wouldn't work.
I'm going to say, yeah, because Discoveryland is all steampunky, isn't it? But yeah, you could see the Tron from the movie element going into the studios, and I would imagine there's probably more land space that way than there is in the park. I don't know.
Yeah. But it may not be Tron themed. They could use the vehicles and the basis of it, but overlay it with something else, like perhaps something from Marvel. Like, who in Marvel rides a motorbike, Jane?
I don't know. Who in Marvel rides a motorbike? Don't ask me questions like that off the hook.
Captain America, Jane.
Does he?
I gather so.
Oh, I suppose a little bit. Well, yeah, I suppose so.
And that would link in with what's happening over in Hotel New York, which is going to see it being Marvelised.
Well, yeah, and obviously we've seen it happening over in DCA, haven't we? With the Guardians of the Galaxy, etc. And they obviously, it's a very big franchise, and it's obviously bringing them in an awful lot of money. So it would only seem a good logical jump, shall we say, that it would be a wise move to bring it into all of the parks worldwide, not just keeping it in the States.
Now, there is something else I would like to mention to Ange to see if she'd fancy doing these, but to any visitor to Disneyland Paris, because one thing Jane and I have loved to do in the past is to go on a backstage tour to get a real flavour of the park. Well, Disneyland now are offering 4 different tours.
Oh, right, okay.
Standard across the parks is the VIP one. And I'm not even going to waste breath on that, because it's muchas moolah. And we don't really want to go to that. But there's 3 others. And I have spoken about the Tower of Terror one before, but I will remind you about it in a moment. But the Disneyland Park tour is a 2-hour tour. It's €50 per adult or €30 for a child aged 3 to 11. Bear that age in mind. That it is up to an 11-year-old child, because that's slightly different to what it is in America, which I believe is 10.
Right, okay.
There's 2 departures, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and you get to find out more about the history of Disneyland Paris.
Okay.
I think that's not a bad price, to be honest. I think that's cheaper than any of the other park tours. It's a shorter tour, but it's definitely cheaper than what you would be paying in the States.
Yeah, and to be fair, you only want a short tour if it's suitable for children of that age. You don't want it to be too long anyway, would you?
Yeah, of course. Now, because they're offering one in Disneyland Park, they're going to obviously have to offer one in Walt Disney Studios. Again, it's the same price. This one departs at 3:00. It takes you to discover the magic of cinema.
Right, okay.
That could be something you might want to consider. And then the third and last one, this is the Tower of Terror tour. Now, I do gather when I've spoken about this in the past, that I've poo-pooed it basically because it was totally in French.
Right, have they changed it?
No.
Oh.
However, it's €40 per adult and 24 per child. It goes on Saturdays and Wednesdays at 9:10. But just because it's in French might not want to stop you if you're a real geek to it. It does say that access to the ride is not included during the tour. But come on, who's going to take you on a backstage tour of Tower of Terror without you going on a ride along?
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you? But I mean, to be fair, the backstage of that sort of ride, I think, is really interesting anyway, from a geeky point of view. Just the workings and the history of it, etc. And it's not a bad price, to be fair. If you've got a smattering of French, you might, be able to pick out what's going on, so to speak.
Yeah, and to be honest, the tour details say that children under 1.2 can't take part in it. Well, why are they doing that unless you get to go on the attraction?
That would seem a little strange, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and all you need is another guest on the tour who's bilingual just to tell you the stuff that's been told.
This is very true. And I'm sure by gesturing and pointing, you'll probably figure out what they're talking about anyway.
Yeah, Qu'est-ce que c'est? Je ne comprends pas. Parlez-vous anglais? Some key phrases.
Yeah, make out that you didn't realise it was French speaking only, and then you might get away with it.
Yeah. Have you got any other top tips about Disneyland Paris that you'd like to convey before we move on, Jayne?
I think, like with any Disney park, do a little bit of research before you go. But I think it's those little hidden gems. I remember recently saying to a couple of my friends who were going, do you know about the dragon under the castle? And most people look at you and go, what? So I think it's just finding those little hidden gems, because it is such a beautiful park, as we've said before, to wander around. So go and find the dragon, and then go upstairs in the castle and go and look at all the storytelling of Sleeping Beauty up there, because that is really unique to the park, and therefore you should go and make the effort to go and find these things. Otherwise, make sure you hit up Big Thunder Mountain, Haunted Mansion, Phantom Manor I should say, because they would be my two must-do attractions while you're there.
Totally agree. Some top tips there, Jayne. Thank you for that. For me, my top tip is, number one, take lots of layers, because it's going to be a little bit chilly. So you want to have a rucksack with you to take the layers off or add the layers on, particularly on a night. And another top tip would be try everything. We are going to put a little bit of a wrap on this show at that point, because we are going to go over and be joined by the wonderful Jim Korkis to continue his musings from the Polynesian Resort. If you missed out on show 185, it's only a little show, but Jim shares all sorts of information, and it was such good fun. So hopefully you're learning a little bit and chuckling along with us at the same time.
Where dreams begin.
Where would you like to lead me? We were going through the Main Street Electrical Parade, and I hijacked it and took it down Center Street over here on the side.
It's fine. We like going down the rabbit hole. So we've sort of spoke about some of the changes that are coming to Magic Kingdom. Epcot's undergoing a massive change right now.
Yes.
We started off in the Mexico Pavilion with the addition of the Three Caballeros ride, which introduced characters into the park. Then they've upped the game by putting in the makeover of Maelstrom with the Frozen attraction, with the storytelling using the same ride.
Yes, and you understand why the change happened in Norway. Two reasons. First off, Frozen hugely popular. took Disney completely by surprise. They, in fact, when Frozen came out, there really wasn't a lot of Frozen merchandise because they thought it was going to do the same amount of business as Tangled. So yes, it's a good movie. It's worth your time. It's worth your money. But we're moving on to the next thing. You never know when a movie is going to strike that chord. Lion King was considered a B movie. It was where they put their B team to work on while their A team was working on Pocahontas, which was going to be the huge blockbuster, which was going to transform everything. So, first off, hugely successful. There's a Broadway musical coming. There's an animated feature film sequel coming. But the most important reason for that, because again today, Disney decisions are made because of money. Norway pulled out its sponsorship from the pavilion. And so, in order to maintain the pavilion, Disney was now paying everything. It was not getting any money from Norway. So they did, as a threat, suggest that they were going to put in Frozen. And yes, there was controversy in Norway where people went to the government and said, no, we've got to start, re-upping our payments for this. We don't want, Norway represented by, by a mythical place. The government just said, we're not getting the bang for our buck anymore. When we first opened the Norway Pavilion, tourism to Norway in that first year increased 400% because people could see, hey, I could eat food from Norway and I'm not going to die. And they also got a chance to meet people who lived in Norway. And it's like, well, next time you're in Norway, you should go to Allison because it has this and that and whatever. But after a while, there was that point of diminishing returns. People didn't want to stop and watch that tourism film anymore after the attraction. They just walked through it. And of course, the film had never been updated because Disney said, we're not going to update this film. You, Norway, have to pay for an updating of this film. And Norway says, listen, that's okay, we'll do this film. And Disney said, no. Not only do you pay for the updating, you pay for the Imagineers to update. And when you go to Imagineering, there's an overhead cost that is just horrendous. The minimum cost per hour for one Imagineer, $250 an hour, or any portion thereof, just for one Imagineer. All right? China got updated because China said, yeah, we don't want people running around with these sideburns and things like this. We'll pay for that. And they're paying for another updating of the China film there. So make sure you see the China film while you can because another one's coming in its place. But yes, Norway got that because Disney had to pay for the pavilion. So how can we make this a revenue-generating pavilion? Yes, we'll put in Frozen. And now that that's been a huge success, okay, let's put the Ratatouille ride over in France. Yeah. And they're talking about more of that. When Epcot opened, the concept was it was not going to be in competition with the Magic Kingdom. It was supposed to be a complement to the Magic Kingdom. And so that's why you wouldn't see characters, because the characters live at the Magic Kingdom. When Michael Eisner came on board in 84, 85, he was being taken through Epcot, and at one point he says, we've been here about 25, 30 minutes. I haven't seen any of the Disney characters. And so Dick Nunes, who was then president of the parks, turned and explained this concept to him. And Dave Venables, who is head of guest relations, told me this story because he was there as well to help move things through. And he said, Eisner's face looked like a cartoon with the eyes popping out and the tongue dropping out of his mouth. And he says, that stops as of now. He says the guests want to see the characters. And so within 2 weeks, you had Farmer Mickey over in the land. You had Spaceship Earth Mickey in his spacesuit out in front of Spaceship Earth, all of that. And then the Imagineers came up with the concept that, okay, we've got these double-decker buses. We'll have the characters on the double-decker bus, and we'll have suitcases along the side. Because they're on vacation. That's why they're in the World Showcase, is they're on vacation and they're visiting their friends. They're visiting Snow White in Germany. They're visiting Belle in France. They're visiting Alice in the UK. And the Imagineers had a huge problem because Aladdin was very popular, so they wanted to have an Aladdin and Jasmine meet and greet in Morocco. Well, the Imagineers got livid. That can never happen because Aladdin and Jasmine are not from Morocco. They're from an imaginary place called Agrabah. So you will notice that the meet and greet takes place outside the pavilion. Now that line has been crossed. Because, again, Frozen, Anna and Elsa are not from Norway.
True.
They're from a land that's inspired by Norway, but they are not from Norway itself. And again, Disney does that on purpose because you don't want to tie to a particular country, because a particular country can have a history or a political agenda and all that, so that will change. And speaking of changes coming, there are spaces for 6 to 8 more countries around the World Showcase. And so I was very surprised at the D23 Expo that they didn't announce.
True, yeah, I was expecting an announcement.
People were expecting an announcement for Spain and for Brazil. But again, those negotiations have been going on for years and years and years. In 2008, when I was working at Epcot, I was helping, as a historian with historical background, the wooing of the Soviet Union to have a pavilion at Epcot, which originally there was going to be a Soviet Union pavilion. And so I came up with, what are connections between, Disney and Russia and all this. And again, that fell apart because there were financial troubles in Russia at the time. And again, as I said, Disney requires a huge upfront investment. The country is paying over 60% of building that pavilion, having the Imagineers design and build that pavilion, of course, with consultants from that country, and then a yearly maintenance fee for a minimum of 5 to 10 years. That's why we never got the Africa pavilion, is because they made those arrangements and then the economy collapsed. That's why we got Morocco, is because the Kingdom of Morocco stepped in and said, how can you have a world showcase and not have something representing Africa? I will pay for the entire pavilion myself. I will send my own royal artisans to do the tile work and the woodwork and all of that, so it's all authentic for that to happen. We almost had a pavilion for Iran. In fact, the contracts were signed, everything was signed, and then the Shah of Iran was overthrown. And the new government said, we are not doing anything that the Shah of Iran wanted to do. But the pavilion had been designed, the contracts had been signed, but again, the government was overthrown. That's why Disney prefers for the pavilions not to work directly with the government, but to work with companies that operate out of that country. And so the sponsors of Japan or China or whatever, those are the restaurants and the shops. And one of the reasons Disney did that as well is to guarantee that they would have actual people from that country come over and represent in the pavilion. So you don't have somebody from the UK walking around Italy trying to pretend to be a person from Italy. You have somebody from Italy there.
It just makes the experience a lot more immersive. Like, I love going to Japan and having conversations with the cast members there to find out more about their culture, because it completely is alien to me, having never been to that part of the world.
And again, many people will never get to those parts of the world. And again, that was Walt's philosophy. In fact, after the first year that Walt opened, Walt intended to have an international street that ran parallel to Main Street. And there he would have buildings. As you walked down the street, you would see facades from maybe Italy and France and Spain. And then when you got down to the bottom of the street and you turned backwards, you saw the backs of the buildings, and there were facades from different countries. So you could have as many countries as possible in that one location, because Walt's philosophy was if people just met people from other countries, we wouldn't have wars. We're dealing with governments, we're dealing with diplomats, but when you deal with people, you see that people have almost the same amount of similarities as there are differences. They care about their family, they care about their health, they care about, being able to get a meal, whatever, and so you see those similarities. So World Showcase is very much a reflection of that. And one of the decisions they had to make about World Showcase is if you do travel, you see that Tokyo or Berlin looks pretty much like New York or Los Angeles. And so they wanted to celebrate the culture of that country. So that's why those pavilions are that way. That's why the cast members are dressed in those traditional costumes. And some of them are embarrassed by that. It's like, we don't wear this, And again, Americans especially can be very, very foolish and oblivious. I worked at Epcot, and one of the roles I had there was a coordinator with college and international programs. So I helped teach classes for international students. For the Japan Pavilion, I taught English as a second language. But I constantly had to counsel some of these cast members because I remember there's one Moroccan cast member who was so upset, and I'm laughing and I shouldn't laugh, but he came to me and he was so upset because a guest, and the guest was being sincere, they were not being snarky. They said, what is it like wearing shoes for the first time? And do you ride a camel to school? And again, the whole purpose of World Showcase is to try and undercut some of these misperceptions. Americans are not very worldly, and I thought I was a little bit, but working as a coordinator and having to deal with these different cultures expanded my perspective that it's not a small world. It's a wide, 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 wide world, and there's so much that we are, completely unaware of. One of the things I like about the UK pavilion is that they have different buildings that represent different time periods.
Yeah, which is nice.
Which I think it is very nice. I don't think it's very nice that at the Rose and Crown they'll serve beer at room temperature. That's not good for Yanks. That's got to be cold. You guys have got to change all of that.
See, it's to do with our climate. We need the warm beer to warm us up because it's always cold.
Oh, okay. I can go with that. And again, I love the fish and chips in the UK pavilion. It's like nothing else you can get in Orlando. I love the shepherd's pie there. There's that authenticity, but even then, there's that touch of Disney magic, because when you go to the very back of the pavilion, where they have that little gazebo there and they have the little maze, and you look over at the row of buildings, those are actually the buildings from Mary Poppins. The designers had so accurately tried to recreate a street from England from that time period that they used the same blueprints to create that. And take a look at the chimneys. And again, this is another case of people look, but they really don't see. You take a look at those chimneys and you go, yeah, they're chimneys, they're fine. There's soot around the chimneys. Those are fake chimneys. There would be no soot residue. But if there was no soot residue, it wouldn't seem real. And again, when Disney does something right, they really do it right. And that's such a joy. And that's why I worry when there are changes, because Walt said, if you're going to change something, you have to change it with something that's better. And better could be a lot of things. So, for instance, at Disneyland, when they changed out the flying saucers, they had to change it out, and that same area became basically where Space Mountain is today. But they changed it out because they needed something that had a higher capacity, because the flying saucers were so popular. Of course, they were also breaking down all the time, but they had a small capacity, and you had more people who wanted to do that, and so that's a guest dissatisfier. So if you're going to change something, make it that it's going to satisfy the guests. So if you're removing the Great Movie Ride, now you're going to have guests in a Mickey Mouse cartoon. And again, that's that philosophy we talked about, the studios immersing yourself in the production itself. You are now an actor in the movie. You are no longer just observing. You are in it. Is this something that is going to be more effective than the Great Movie Ride? And again, it's interesting too, is this Mickey Mouse cartoon is not a classic Mickey Mouse cartoon. It is the new design and approach that is being done for the Mickey Mouse cartoons for the Disney Channel. And even though we have an official voice for Mickey Mouse, those cartoons, the directors and producers picked somebody else to do Mickey Mouse's voice because they wanted Mickey Mouse to have a little edge to his voice. So now you're going to be in this cartoon, but it's going to be in the cartoons that we produce today, not the cartoons, the classic cartoons, because kids consider those old. Again, for me, just because something is old doesn't mean that it's, outdated. All of this new rush now of, yes, look at the new phone that's been released and all that. Well, my phone still works. Why do I really need a new phone? Just because it's new doesn't mean that it's better. Again, I'll bring out my grumpy old man cane and wave it in the air. I had more fun with my VHS tapes, and they seemed more forgiving, and I seemed able to locate something on a VHS tape more than I can on the new technology that we have today.
Well, I can just say I've got Song of the South on VHS, and I'll never probably have it on DVD or Blu-ray. So.
No. I think that's a safe bet because, again, Disney considers that a no-win situation. That even if they just released it in a limited edition, for adults only, they would still get severe pushback. And they would still get parents plop it in the machine and fast forward through any introductory material or explanatory material just to run the film for the kids. And then the kids would see that with no explanation whatsoever. This is a fantasy film. If you take a look at the colors, even in the live action section, it is a saturated Technicolor, which is not real. It's a fantasy, And again, it never really gets the credit for being as innovative as it is. Not just the combination of live action and animation, but at the time it was made, 1946, 1947, films made in America, if you had a black performer, they had to be filmed in a separate segment so that segment could be cut out when the film was run. And in this, you have, a black child and a white child working together as equals, as peers, and having fun. And you have a white trash little girl who's poor, and she's interacting with this boy who obviously comes from money and privilege. And so the whole point of this is, oh my gosh, look, everybody can get together, and when you're children, you're all equals. But I will tell you, I ran a couple of clips from this for a presentation I did at a museum, and there was a Black history instructor, and I ran that last section, the zippity-doo-dah section, which everybody loves to sing along with, and I was going to make this point, and the Black history instructor, the first thing he said is, look how badly they treat the little black boy. Even the dog runs ahead of him. And I went, what? What film are you watching? I said, it's not in the storyboard that, yes, he is at the end of the line. In that particular segment, yes, he is as they're running along. If you look further into the scene, he's now in the middle, or he's now... But again, people make up their minds, and it's very difficult to prove a negative. We were talking this morning that the new book I'm writing, I'm debunking Walt myths, that Walt was not anti-Semitic, Walt was not frozen, Walt did not offer all of the Disney company to the first man who became pregnant and gave birth. I don't know where that came from. Walt was not a Nazi sympathizer. Walt, but I hesitate to do that because it's very hard to say, look, no, this didn't happen. Here's the cremation certificate. Here I interviewed, the people at Forest Lawn. I interviewed the family. Cryogenics technology was not prepared when Walt died. I talked with the guy who was the guy of the first company that did cryogenics, which was after Walt passed away. And he said, oh boy, we would have loved to have frozen Walt, but no. And again, I know that there are still people who will go, well, documents can be faked. I know what I know. A Disney cast member told me this, so, they know. It must be. He's buried under Pirates of the Caribbean. And supposedly he's buried under Pirates of the Caribbean because that was being built when he passed away. Because I was wondering, if you're going to bury somebody, why are you burying him under pirates, It's because it was being built while he was...
Where dreams begin.
Thank you for listening. We do urge you, please, if you enjoy our show, leave us an iTunes review. Share the show with one of your Disney-loving friends so that they can give us a listen. You can tweet us at DisDreamGirls or at Jayne Phipps. Visit our website, DisneyDreamGirls.com, and you can also pop by our Facebook page, facebook.com/DisneyDreamGirls. But until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.